what's up, Spice Heads? Welcome back to yet another episode of On the Air, the show that's all about getting IT pros and tech vendors together to geek out over technology. As always, I'm your host, Justin Ong. We've got a great show for y'all today. We're going to be talking all about understanding the costs of cloud storage and what you guys, as potential cloud customers, need to know about selecting a vendor. So for more on this, we have a great panel of experts for y'all today, including an IT pro from the Spiceworks community, as well as, I guess you could call him an expert from Wasabi. He's also the CEO and Vice President, or the CEO and President, I should say. So without further ado, let's go ahead and kick things off with a round of introductions. Batting first, coming to us from the East Coast. We're excited to have him back. He's a longtime friend of the show. Everyone please welcome back Mr. Shiva Rajagopalan. Shiva, welcome back to the show. How's it going today?
Good, very good. Thank you, Justin.
Shiva, always a pleasure to have you on.
Same to be here.
For those who have not met you before, do you mind telling us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Yes, my name is Shiva Rajagopalan. I work for a company called InfoCrossing. I'm the database administrator, and we provide, data center services and cloud services.
All right, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Shiva.
Thank you.
Our next guest is the first time. We are excited to have him in studio today. He is the president and CEO of Wasabi. Please welcome Mr. David Friend. David, welcome to the show today. How's it going?
Good, good.
David, thank you so much for joining us. We're excited to have you in. For those who are not familiar with Wasabi, do you mind telling us a little bit about yourself as well as what you guys do at Wasabi?
Sure. My name's Dave Friend, and I founded Wasabi along with my co-founder, Jeff Flowers, about almost 4 years ago. And prior to that, we had founded a backup company called Carbonite.
Okay, familiar with them, yeah.
And then before that, there were 4 other companies. So
okay.
Wasabi is number 6 for me.
Wonderful, very cool.
Over the last 100 years.
Wow. And then if you could give us a quick intro to Wasabi and what you guys do.
Sure. Wasabi is hot cloud storage. The product is pretty much identical to Amazon S3. The difference is it's 1/5 the price and a lot faster.
Okay, well, we'll figure out exactly how you guys make that possible on today's show, but thank you for joining us.
Sure.
Of course, what would On the Air be without you guys, the viewers? So for more on that, we're going to be kicking things over to our favorite chat desk host and yours, Miss Chelsea. Chelsea, what is going on?
Hey. Thank you, Justin. Yes, that's right. It's me, Chelsea, your chat desk host. Per the usual, you have questions and we have answers, so be sure to get those questions into Q&A. And if I ask your questions live on the air, you'll be in the running for some super cool swag and prizes from Wasabi. Do y'all want to know what they're hooking up with today?
Heck yes.
Alrighty, we'll start with the swag. Wasabi is coming through with a Wasabi swag pack, complete with drawstring bag. We've got a handy dandy notebook that has a pen and a pocket, so you never have to lose your thumb drives or chapstick again. Then we've got some stickers. Everyone loves stickers for your laptops, for your tumblers, whatever you need. A pair of socks. Always good to have a spare, so we got some Wasabi
cool.
socks for you. Yeah, I like it.
Those.
I like them a lot, actually. And then, who doesn't love a t-shirt? You're gonna have the Wasabi Rumble in the Jungle t-shirt in your Wasabi swag pack. So if you want to be eligible and in the running for this swag pack, be sure to get your questions into Q&A, and if I ask your questions live, you'll be in the running. And then we've got our grand prize, which is going out to 2 very lucky attendees of today's show. That grand prize is a 25-inch Alienware gaming monitor. Who could ask for anything better to get their game on? So for all you gamers out there, stick around till the end of the show to see if you're one of our lucky winners. Coming up later, we're gonna go over the results of my community poll, where I asked, what would be your biggest barrier to entry to using cloud storage? And then later in the show, we're bringing back one of our favorite segments and yours. And Lee, I see you out there in the audience. This is one of Lee's favorite segments. He calls it, that's a paddling. We call it good move, bad move. We've added a special spicy twist that you won't want to miss, so be sure to stick around, because trust me, you do not want to miss what we have in store for a good move, bad move today, and of course our panelists. Sorry, panelists. Before I pass it back over to Justin, I want to give a quick shout out to everyone in chat. I saw Native Texan. Sorry I won't be able to hug you at Spice World, but hopefully you tune into the live stream. What's up, Edit, Commandlet? It's great to see all of your faces. I feel like we've been away for far too long. And then I got to do my quick PSA from the warden. Remember to keep the pro in professional and to keep it spicy when engaging in chat. All right, don't you forget that, guys. That's all that I got for Meow, so back to you, Justin.
All right, thank you guys so much. We'll be taking your questions later on in the show, so make sure to get those questions into our Q&A widget. We'll also be announcing the winner of those prizes. Well, David, I'd like to start off with you, if that's okay. Cloud storage has been around for a while. It's not new necessarily, but it's kind of new as far as being like a widely accepted part of the IT ecosystem. And yet, at the same time, when it comes to pricing, even though this is kind of something that you think of as being a bit commoditized, the prices that each of these different cloud providers offer seems to be wildly different. Can you talk to us a little bit about, maybe some of the biggest misconceptions that you've seen about why cloud storage costs the way that it does?
Well, the hyperscalers have been in the cloud storage market for a decade, and technology was a little different a decade ago when their systems were designed. Wasabi's using a whole new generation of disk drives called SMR drives, which pack more data onto disk. And we've actually, because we've been in the cloud storage business with Carbonite for a decade, we've learned a lot of tricks about how to get much higher disk utilization, how to get higher throughput, how to essentially run a large hyperscale storage data center a lot more efficiently and less expensively. So it's a whole new generation. We call it Cloud 2.0 because it's the beginning of, I think, a number of other vendors, not just cloud storage, but people doing compute and so forth who are using really the newest, latest technology to provide specific services, parts of that cloud. But I think the pricing is coming down rapidly. I mean, we're at $6 a terabyte per month. Amazon S3 is at $23 per terabyte per month. So that's almost a 5 or 6 to 1 drop in the cost of cloud storage. And that makes a huge difference to people. In addition to that, I think the world's going to turn against this idea of all these little micro charges. With Amazon, Google, and Microsoft, you have these egress fees. So it's free to put your data in, but if you want to get your data back out, they want to charge you. And most people who are migrating from on-prem storage to the cloud don't know what their egress charges are going to be. So it creates this uncertainty about what your budget should be. And so we heard this loud and clear from customers when we were doing our market research a few years ago. So we decided to have no egress fees, no access fees, no API charges for puts, gets, deletes, list kind of operations. And you get a bill with essentially one line item on it, which is the amount of storage. And people seem to like that model because it doesn't lock them in to one vendor. If you want to take your football and go take it to some other team, there's no cost to take your data out to do that.
Mm-hmm. So these egress charges, it's not just if you're looking to actually exit your cloud presence. This is just accessing the data that you're already paying to store in there.
Yeah, and if you look around on the internet, you'll see a lot of horror stories about people whose first Amazon bill is 2 or 3x what they thought it was going to be because they've never metered egress. Mm-hmm. If you've got a bunch of EMC storage servers, you kind of know how much storage you have, but most people have no idea how often they touch that data. Mm-hmm.
And so you talk about, it's not just that you guys are smaller than Amazon, ergo you have less overhead, and that's how you're able to offer the pricing that's more competitive. There's actual technological advantages that you guys are utilizing. Can you talk to us a little bit more about that?
Sure. So, first we get a significant bump by using SMR drives, which pack more data on the same size disk. So there's a lower cost per bit. Those of you who know about SMR technology, you can't just take an despite the fact that it looks like a regular hard drive, you can't just take an SMR drive and plug it in where you would normally have a standard PMR drive. It doesn't work that way because the tracks on the disk overlap. That's why they call it shingled. It's like the shingles on a house, and you can't just go in and randomly change some bit on the disk without ripping off all the shingles above it. So it's hard work to design what we call a sequential file system that makes use of this SMR drives. So by having a sequential file system, which means that we write an entire track with one file, and then we move to the next track, write that track, and so forth. So there's no wasted bits on disk. We can read and write data at almost the theoretical throughput of the drive. A block-oriented file system like Linux, which is what 99% of the world's cloud storage is based on, First of all, if you have a block that's 4 bytes long and you put a 1 byte long file in it, 3,999 bytes are going to be wasted. But more importantly, a large file will take up thousands of blocks scattered all over the drive. And if you can get 25% of the theoretical throughput of the drive, you're lucky, because most of the time the head is moving all over the place, waiting for the next block to come around under it so it can be read. And furthermore, the thing that wears out in a disk drive is the head. So if you can minimize head movement, this is one of the tricks we learned at Carbonite. If you can minimize head movement, you can routinely get almost double the normal life out of a drive, which cuts the cost of storage in half. Because if you can take a drive that normally has a 4-year life and get 7 or 8 years of life out of it, your amortized cost per year is going to be 50%.
Now, are there any trade-offs to go in with the SMR design versus kind of more traditional storage?
Yeah, well, with traditional storage, block-oriented file storage, you can erase data, and the specific blocks that data was stored in will get freed up, and then you can reuse them. You can't do that with an SMR drive. To collect garbage, so to speak, or to recover space from deleted files, you read the entire drive and write it to another drive, and then you get rid of all the dead stuff in the process of doing that. That actually works in our favor, because one of the things about long-term data storage is you can't just leave a file sit for 5 years or 10 years and expect to be able to read it at the end, because there's bit rot, there's random disk errors creep in. And so when we transfer the data from one disk to another in order to compress it and get rid of the garbage, we also read the file and do the checksums. And so you should do that anyway. So we check the data. If you give me like an MRI or a piece of satellite imagery or a movie to store for 10 years, I will have checked the hash on that file every 30 days for 10 years. So you can be sure that at the end of that period of time, that data is still going to be fresh. Because essentially with the erasure coding, we have 5 separate copies of the data. And if one of those copies gets corrupted by a cosmic ray or whatever happens, the other 4 copies will allow it to be rebuilt.
Very cool. Now, Shiva, talk to us a little bit. You guys are currently, utilizing some of these hyperscalers, like David had mentioned. You've also gotten a chance to test out the Wasabi platform. First, let's talk a little bit first about how you guys are currently using the cloud.
Yeah, we have on-prem data center like a DAS storage, a SAN, and a NAS storage. In addition, we also use Amazon's S3 and the Elastic Block Storage technologies. And on the Microsoft side, we have their Azure storage as well as the blob storage, as they call it, actually. So we've been on it for about 3 or 4 years now, actually. And so I happened to sort of, bump into Wasabi at one of the trade shows earlier in the year. And so when I saw some of the claims that were made by Wasabi, it sort of aroused curiosity in me. So I was always wanting to try it out at some point in time. And luckily, what happened was Spiceworks, gave the opportunity of me participating in the Wasabi community as a Wasabi advocate. And so from there, I've been in that community for over a month now. And in the last 2 weeks, I tried sort of, putting some data from our on-prem environment into the Wasabi cloud storage on the US East 1 region, as they call it, I think, if I'm not mistaken. And I put about 20 gigabytes of data, and the process to transfer the data, the user interface, as well as, the account setup, etc. If somebody is familiar with Amazon S3, I think they can easily go through the process without any difficulty. And so it was a pretty smooth process. And so I put some manufacturing data in it, basically manufacturing inventory data. And typically most manufacturers have what they call A category parts, which are fast moving parts, and then they have the medium or the B category parts, and then the slow moving parts. So my goal was trying to retrieve both the A and the C categories to see, how quickly we were able to sort of retrieve the data. And the results were very promising. Actually, it is as good as what they claim to be in the technical write-up that I read ahead of time.
Okay, very cool. Yeah. And just to clarify something that she was talking about, so she was a member of the Wasabi advocacy group here in Spiceworks. He's part of a group that's getting an extended preview overview of Wasabi Storage, also helping Wasabi to take a look at some of their marketing material and messaging, as well as their product and processes. And if you guys are watching today and you're interested also in joining, you can apply to join as well by sending an email to advocacyteam@spiceworks.com. That's advocacyteam@spiceworks.com. And just let us know if you're interested. So Shiva, once you migrated the data over, so you said that the actual performance was more or less what they purported to be.
Yeah, and the other interesting part, as I think as David said, is basically the fact that they have a pricing calculator on their website as well, and so the moment you know what kind of data and what size of data you're trying to put onto their environment, it pops out what your bill is going to be, and so there is a fair degree of certainty in terms of what your spend is going to be. And as he again said, there are no hidden charges in terms of I think Amazon, even if you put it in Amazon's Glacier or S3 environment, and if you have certain SLAs with them from a retrieval standpoint, you have to pay them, retrieval fees, and then you have to pay access charges, transfer charges, so on and so forth. And even if you want to delete some data, you have to pay some deletion fees, etc. with Amazon. And so as he says, it all adds up. Whereas here, I think, I was very happy to see a single one-liner, as he claims, in terms of one charge for the amount of data that you sort of put on their environment.
And are you able to share kind of what the price difference actually was based on your calculation? Obviously, this is just an estimate.
Yes, the price was from what I saw, it was about 1/4 of what we were doing with Amazon, on a like-to-like basis. Yeah. Okay.
So David, he's got 1/4. We're talking about 1/5. Obviously, your mileage is going to vary. What are the kind of primary considerations are there to kind of understanding what that cost benefit actually is? Is it really just kind of the egress fees, how often you're accessing the data? What are the factors that actually play into the actual discount that you're going to be able to see?
Yeah, well, obviously, if you never touch your data, then all you're going to see is, Wasabi's storage fee, which is $6 a terabyte per month, and Amazon's storage fee, which I think is $23 a terabyte per month. If you start touching your data, now you're looking at $90 per gigabyte access fee from Amazon, going down to $50 depending on how much you use, and $0 with Wasabi. So if you're touching 10 or 20% of your data every month, that will typically add 30-40% to the cost of your Amazon bill. So you can just figure out, if I have 100 terabytes stored and I access 10% of that, right? 10% on top of the $23, the 10% is going to be another $5. So, that adds about 20% to the bill. And if you access 100% of your data a month, you're going to be looking at $23 to store it and $90 to access it. So you're going to get like 5x. And those are the kind of things where people get, holy cow, what a shock, on your first bill.
And Shiva, when you did the migration, you just utilized the web interface, or was there any specific tools?
Yes, I use a web interface, and then I made some API calls, actually using some of the custom APIs that we have to sort of, be able to access the data and retrieve the data.
Yeah, and was there any, challenges or any learning curve associated?
Very minimal, I would say, very minimal learning curve, to be honest.
Did you find the Wasabi interface to be pretty similar? I mean, we designed we tried to make it almost identical
surprisingly,
to Amazon's.
It was almost like a copycat of Amazon, to be honest.
Yeah, that's what we tried to do. There's a lot of people who have already been educated on S3, and we didn't want them to have to re-educate themselves to use Wasabi.
And so for the migration, I mean, it looks like Shiva just used the web interface. Is there an equivalent of what is it called, the Amazon Snowball, where you physically ship the files over to get them into the cloud?
Yeah, I mean, we tried to pretty much do the same things that Amazon's doing. So you can bring your data in over the web. You can bring your data in over what's called Wasabi Direct Connect, which is essentially you can rent a port, say a 10 gig port, and then you bring your fiber, your connection to our cage, and you can rent a port and then have a dedicated connection. Or you can use what are called Wasabi Balls.
Wasabi Balls.
Which I saw some Wasabi Balls over there.
Yes,
somewhere.
we got some Wasabi Balls for later. But yes.
But these Wasabi Balls are 100 terabyte appliances. They're very similar to the Amazon Snowball. And we find that, believe it or not, there are a lot of people out there who don't have the available bandwidth to move large amounts of data. So, if some customer says, I've got 5 petabytes of data I want to move, we'll ship them 10 Wasabi Balls, they'll fill them up, they'll send them back, and meanwhile they're filling up the next 10, send them back, and before you know it, it's all done. We thought about making bigger ones that maybe would hold a petabyte, or Amazon has a snowmobile, which is an 18-wheeler with 100 petabytes in it. We're not at that point yet.
Okay.
We may be. But it's funny, in between the little 100 terabyte appliance and the truck, it's kind of a no man's land, because anything bigger than 100 terabytes, you need you can't lift it. You got to, and then you get into carts and forklifts and all kinds of stuff. So we found that people can move a lot of data by just sequentially loading up a bunch of these smaller things that you can handle. You can actually stick them back in the shipping crate.
Very
Works.
Cool. And then, we've been talking about how the Wasabi product is specifically similar to the Amazon S3, but at this price, like Shiva had mentioned, it's possible that you may also not, even if you don't necessarily need it for hot storage, it may also still be price competitive at some of their colder storage. Is that?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly, it's as cheap as Glacier, unless you never ever touch your data. Because Glacier, with 9 cents egress, or $90 per terabyte egress versus $4 to store it, you don't have to touch your data, but once every 10 years, and you've lost your cost advantage. And I think that really dead storage, really cold storage, is sort of a niche. It's something which people will do for regulatory reasons and so forth. But when you look at the minuscule difference in price between hot storage, where you're talking milliseconds to retrieve the data, and something like Glacier, where you're talking hours or even days to get your data back, the utility of the data is so much higher when you keep it in hot storage. I mean, if you've got it in cold storage and you decide, now I want to bring it back, that's going to cost you a lot of egress fees. So it's better to just put it in hot storage. And in fact, our customers in Hollywood are doing what they call de-archiving, which is they're taking all those old TV shows and movies that they have stored, and they're moving them back into the cloud, hot storage, because now, you can find somebody who's willing to pay to watch anything, some old TV show from the 1950s.
It's all about the content, yeah.
And if it's not hot, if it's not live, you can't watch it. So we're doing a lot of business as the origin server for content delivery networks, where people are putting videos up, and then they're putting them out on video on demand services.
Okay. So let's talk next. What was I going to say next? So we've been talking a lot about the cost competitiveness. I mean, so do you feel like this is something... Actually, let me back up a step. So Shiva had mentioned earlier, they're using cloud storage primarily for non-sensitive data, maybe stuff that doesn't necessarily need to go through compliance. What is Wasabi's current stance on regulated customers?
Sure. So, we went through the trouble of getting HIPAA compliance and FINRA and a bunch of other CJIS so that we could store data like police body cam data, that sort of stuff. We hopefully will get some ability to sell into FedRAMP, this year. So we're following pretty much in the footsteps of Amazon, who has most of those same certifications and also has their GovRAMP product, GovCloud they call it, which is they're able to sell to the FBI and to the DoD and people like that. And so we hope to be at that stage ourselves at some point, not too long.
Okay. And then just a couple of other questions before we go to our next segment. I mean, so obviously this is something that is certainly great, to kind of meet the specific need. Do you see this being the goal as being kind of Wasabi will replace all storage, and that, everyone will go to something like Wasabi first, or do you kind of always see Wasabi being like kind of one component of, the long-term storage solution?
Yeah. So I'm a believer in multi-cloud. We were talking earlier, I told you, I'm old enough to remember when you walk into a data center and every piece of gear in the data center had an IBM logo on it. And one by one, people picked off the disk storage, picked off the printers, picked off the memory boards, picked off some of the network gear. And now you walk into a modern data center and you've got 20 manufacturers' gear all working together with standards. And I think that's what will happen with the cloud as well. So I think, 5 or 10 years from now, serious applications for enterprise customers, somebody will pick the best storage from this vendor, they'll pick the best compute from this other vendor, they'll pick the best content delivery network from somebody else, they'll pick the best AI software from somebody else, and systems integrators like Shiva's company will put it all together and make it work for the customer. I don't care whether you're Amazon or Microsoft or how much money you have, you cannot be best at everything. And innovation will not stop at the big 3 hyperscalers. There are always going to be companies like Wasabi that say, we know more about cloud storage than anybody else. We don't know about compute, we don't know about a lot of other things, but we sure as heck know storage. And we can do, by focusing on that, we can do a better job at storage than anybody else. And I think that you'll see partners like we have Packet and StackPath and other companies who are doing exact same thing in other parts of the cloud ecosystem.
All right, very cool. Well, we've been talking a lot about kind of where we see, cloud vendors playing into the long-term IT strategy. But I wanted to hear from our IT pros and understand what they feel like are maybe some of the biggest barriers to entry for moving to cloud storage. So let's pack it over to Chelsea and find out what folks had to say.
Hey. Yes, that's right. Earlier this week, Justin, I did post in the community asking just that. What would be your biggest barrier to entry using cloud storage? It was a great poll. They got a lot of results. I just posted the link in chat so that people can get their last few votes in. Some of the options for barriers included cost, security, none were all in, ease of use, and then we had the other options so that people could reply in the comments below with maybe some other options that weren't in the poll. The top voted barrier was cost. I don't know if that will be surprising to you guys. But in a close second was security, and then we had 12% of the vote that went towards other. I was skimming through some of the results and I noticed that performance was something that was mentioned in the thread. So having cost, security, and performance leading the charge on those barriers, I think this would be a great time for maybe our panelists to talk a little bit about those.
Are you guys surprised by this breakdown?
Not at all. Yeah. Not at all, yeah.
Price and security, would you say?
Yeah, I've been believing for a long time that storage is storage. And, people can try to put brands on it and so forth, but the truth of the matter is there's this big swath that goes all the way from, the very high performance stuff is kind of a niche over here, and the completely dead storage, which is a tape in a cardboard box in a warehouse somewhere, is at the other end. And in this big swath in the middle is just plain storage. It's fast enough for 90% of the things you do, and it's a commodity. And whoever produces the best quality at the lowest price is going to win that war. So we're kind of like somebody that just makes sheet steel, and we figured out how to do it a little cheaper than the other guys. And that's why we're getting so much business.
Shiva, would you say, based on your experience, price and security are the two biggest concerns for people?
Yes, I would put security on top of price, actually, because price in today's world, I think, is very negotiable.
Sure.
So I guess security and ease of use is something that I would look at.
Yeah. I was also curious about the performance, because, obviously, you're getting what you're paying for, but assuming cost isn't an issue, I guess that's the question. Are we talking about, do you feel like their concerns, and I know we're speculating, is performance based on like the high cost that you're probably paying, or is it pure performance, I guess, compared to other solutions like on-premises? Is that a concern for some people, you think?
Depends on the type of data that they're trying to sort of put on the cloud and the user experience that they're trying to give from a retrieval standpoint. So performance latency could be an issue at times.
Well, we don't see people using standalone cloud storage for transactional systems, for example. but you might take your transaction system, back it up with Veeam, and then Veeam talks to Wasabi. So, I mean, that's more likely to be the scenario that you're going to see right now.
That's actually a good question. So do you guys currently work with backup partners that are...
Yeah, Veeam, Commvault, just about everybody in the industry now. Yep.
Okay. All right. Very cool. Well, I understand we also got a ton of questions coming in from the audience, so let's kick it on over to Chelsea and find out what folks also want to know.
Sure thing, Justin. Q&A is blowing up. Awesome. I'm excited. That means more chances for people to win the awesome Wasabi swag pack. So the first question of the day, I'm going to pick Michael7140 Hertz. What's up, Michael? Michael wants to know, what is Wasabi's take on archival type storage? In parentheses, he puts stuff stored once but rarely retrieved.
All right. David, I mean, we addressed this a little bit, but yeah, I mean, do we feel like Wasabi is a good, what types of archival clients do you feel like Wasabi is still a good, competitor for?
Yeah, well, at that end of the market, you're competing with tape, and tape has long been kind of the gold standard for sort of archival storage. But if your tape is in a tape library and it's active, where you can get, say, an hour, maybe even minutes retrieval time, it's going to be a lot more expensive than it would be if you took the tape out, stuck it in a cardboard box, and put it in a warehouse. That is really a cheap form of storage, and it's a good form of storage if you're doing it for regulatory reasons or for real disaster reasons. But if you've got your tape in a tape library, there's lots of white papers on the internet now that show that the total cost of ownership of that kind of a system is actually significantly more expensive than hot storage like Wasabi. So I think that particular market is going to shrink. And we're seeing this in our own customer base because we're working with Iron Mountain right now, who has a tape to cloud conversion system. So you can give Iron Mountain a huge box of LTO tapes, and they'll upload it to the cloud. And so, and I can see these kind of things are happening all over the media and entertainment industry, where people have all of these valuable assets sitting on LTO tape, and they're useless. Nobody wants to click the button on their TV screen and wait an hour for the show to start. So I think that now that the costs are more or less equivalent or even cheaper for the cloud storage, I think that we're going to see that what I'd call kind of semi-hot archival storage move to spinning disk.
Okay. All right. Chelsea, let's keep on going. What other questions do we have?
Sure thing. Well, as you can imagine, we've had quite a few questions around pricing and how you can keep it so competitive, especially when compared to Amazon.
Sure.
So I picked two that I really liked. One is from Technically Clinical, and the other is from Julian2160, but I feel like they kind of build off each other well. So Technically Clinical wants to know, how does the 1/5 price less break down? Faster and less expensive, or is it cents for storage compared to the transactions, download, etc.? And then Julian wants to know, at 1/5 the cost, what compromises, if any, are made in data reliability and accountability versus Amazon's offerings?
Wow.
That's a lot.
Yeah. Well, some people think we are losing money on this storage, but I can assure you that you don't raise $80 million from professional investors unless you've got a good prospect for making a profit. As I said, this is like a whole new generation of storage architecture that's a lot more efficient and a lot less expensive than what you could have done 10 or 15 years ago when the hyperscalers were designing their cloud storage system. Both Wasabi and Amazon and the others, in fact, are 11 nines of durability, which is pretty much the gold standard today. I actually ran the numbers, and if you gave me 1 million objects to store, I would lose one object every 659,000 years.
Oh.
So 11 nines of durability. That's why you don't hear about Amazon and the others losing data. They may have outages, which is a different issue. And we've had outages too. Somebody cuts through a fiber, or there's some power disaster in the data center or something like that. But in terms of losing data, you just don't hear about the cloud vendors losing data, and that's because there's so much redundancy built into these systems. There are white papers on the Wasabi website that really address more of the technical details, because everybody wants to know, how do they do it? How can we be so much cheaper than Amazon? But I can tell you, having been in the cloud storage business now for 10 or 12 years, if you really focus on that, you learn a lot of tricks, and it goes right down to how do you minimize the number of bodies that it takes per petabyte to run this stuff in a data center, because you'd be surprised how much just human beings add to the cost of storage. And if you can literally have a data center where you can shut the lights out and visit once every 3 months instead of having somebody have to sit there and babysit this equipment, makes a huge difference in the costs. So we're kind of like the Walmart of cloud storage. We just watch every nickel, and we make sure that our system is solid and up and running and provides good, fast service.
And so, just to clarify on some of the questions, so we've established that it is cheaper, but the actual pricing model and calculation, I should ask this to Shiva. Is there anything funky like with Wasabi's pricing that they're like, okay, well, you got to do all this weird math in order to get to that?
No, it's very straightforward actually if you see it.
Yeah. Okay. And then the second question is, so the trade-offs. I mean, is there a case where someone would still go to Amazon S3 over Wasabi?
The case when somebody would go to S3 is if you want to take advantage of all of Amazon's other services. So if I want to build a complete system, and I don't really care that much about the storage costs. Let's say I'm building something where most of my costs are going to be in compute, and it's not a big deal how much the storage costs, then I would just stick with Amazon, because you're dealing with something, it's all in one environment. So I think, and there are lots and lots of those cases, obviously. Yeah. But if someone were starting out today to build what they hope would be the next Instagram or something like that, I would not do it in Amazon's cloud, because you're going to be stuck with a lot of storage that you're going to have to keep live for a long period of time, with probably not a lot of revenue to show for it. It's ad supported or something like that, and the difference between $23 a terabyte and $6 a terabyte could mean the difference between a profitable business and an unprofitable business.
All right, Chelsea, let's keep it going.
Alrighty, this next one is in for Mr. Lee Young.
Lee.
What's up, Lee? You mentioned no egress charges on Wasabi. As there are no charges, are there any data transfer limitations or speed limitations?
Oh, that's a good question.
Of course it is.
Not hard and fast. We have a sort of a rule of thumb, which is, we don't want customers to be accessing more than 100% of their data per month. We obviously do have customers who are doing more than that. And just like Amazon, we have what's called a fair use policy, which is if somebody is hogging the resources to the extent that it affects other users, then we'll give them a warning. We've had people upload videos and then say, we don't need to buy a content delivery network. We'll just have 1 million people all bang away on Wasabi directly. And those kind of people, there have been 3 or 4 of them, and we've had to sort of shut them off because they just were plain abusing the system. But in general, if you think about storage, more data comes in than goes out. Bandwidth is symmetrical. So we typically have a lot of outbound bandwidth just sitting there. And until it gets all used up, there's no point in our getting upset about somebody who's using a lot of egress.
So there's no sort of like throttling like what I have with my cell provider. Even though I'm on an unlimited plan, if I go over too much, they may start to limit.
We may get to that at some point as a way to discourage people from abusing the service, But it's just like the all-you-can-eat buffet. Sooner or later somebody's going to throw you out.
All right, Chelsea, let's get another question.
Sure thing. This next one is in from Michael SC. What kind of API and other tools are available to access and utilize the storage?
That's a good question. Either David or Shiva, you guys want to talk about the API?
Well, you use the API, so you can, you're techie. You can talk about it better than I can.
Yeah, you have the choice of APIs. Either you can leverage on some of the custom APIs that you develop when you work with the other vendors, or you can go to the API marketplace with a traditional, API vendor, and you can pick up an API and work with that as well.
Okay. And then as far as like, again, the Amazon to Wasabi compatibility, is it pretty much mirrored? Like the calls that are available for Amazon are pretty much available for Wasabi?
I think so, yes.
Okay. Yeah, we have a lot of people who are running their apps in Amazon's cloud, but they're storing their data in Wasabi, and they're either doing that over the internet or using Amazon Direct Connect. And anything that works has an S3 API on it, S3 connector should work with Wasabi. I use a little free thing called Cloudberry Drive, I think it's called, on my laptop, and it talks S3 out the back, and it makes essentially a W drive on my Windows computer. And I threw away all my hard drives that I had littered on my desk. It's infinitely scalable and it's cheap. Cool. For me, it's extremely cheap, actually.
Shiva, Shiva, when you migrated over, you changed it. Was it just a matter of just pointing to a different database? Did you have to make any actual changes in the API calls that you were using?
No, the only thing is basically I had to point the API call to a Wasabi, infrastructure. Yeah. That's about it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and generally you go, instead of going s3.amazon.com, you go s3.wasabi.com, and it should just work.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Chelsea, let's keep on going.
Sure. This next one is in from T. Roberts 2, aka Dread Pirate dash. Not quite. Is it better / cheaper to use cloud storage for main file servers or just for backups? The cost to keep file server in AWS seemed very expensive.
Yeah, well, both Amazon and on-prem storage is a lot more expensive than Wasabi. I was just talking to a customer that had 100 terabytes of EMC Isilon that cost him about $220,000, and the maintenance was 18%, and so the cost of the maintenance was more than what Wasabi would cost. So I think backup is a great application for use in the cloud, because you're not really, even if you're 1,000 miles from one of our data centers and you have 30 or 40 milliseconds of latency, that's really no problem for backups. And so we get a lot of people giving us second copies of their data, people who are replicating their servers to Wasabi because they're going to, or we get people replicating from Amazon to Wasabi because they don't want to have all their eggs in one basket. And, which is why the backup companies, Veeam and Commvault and the others, really love us, because we provide a very cheap, fast, and convenient way to do backups without having to have the customer go through a big RFP and buy a lot of hardware and that kind of stuff, because usually it's easier to get OpEx than it is CapEx.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right, Chelsea, it's time for a couple more.
Sure. Another one from the Dread Pirate. The question is, Wasabi, do they charge for uploads and downloads, or just downloads? Just trying to see where the charges would be.
No,
neither.
Neither. No, they're just only the storage is the only charge that you get. Yeah.
All right.
That was easy. Our next one is in from WW Wes. Is it pretty easy to upload from my on-premise server via backup upload?
That's a good question.
It depends on what software you're using for your backup.
Yeah.
But most software, most serious backup software today has an S3 connector on it. And if it has an S3 connector on it, you could use it either with Amazon S3 or with Wasabi.
So those S3 connectors think that Wasabi is S3?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Totally.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the S3 API is becoming a de facto standard.
Sure.
Ceph and the open source software is all complying with the S3 API. Even hardware vendors like Cloudian, are adopting the S3 API.
Yeah. All right, Chelsea, I think we got time for 2 more questions.
For 2 more, okay. I just got in one from Joel Kostelecki, going by. Let me find his question. I just lost it. Here it is. Bailey's prisoner today. Is that a joke I should know?
The joke is Bailey is the warden of the chat prison. That may or may not be Dim Forest. So
okay, got it. Got it. Now it's all making sense. Okay,
Yes.
I thought I was the warden, but I guess not. Or I thought
You're
maybe...
not as scary as Bailey, apparently.
No, I'm not, so I'll take that. So Joel wants to know, is there an MSP interface, or do you have to have each client separate?
That's a great question.
Yeah,
How do you guys work with MSPs?
It is, yeah. So we have about 1,300 MSPs now in our network, and Wasabi is designed from the ground up to be multi-tenant. So you have, if you're an MSP, you have a separate panel. You can buy one Wasabi copy for yourself and then portion that out to all of your customers. And we provide all the interface so that you can see which customers are using how much storage, so you can send out bills. And there's a whole API that is very good at supporting the channel. And in fact, we're moving pretty much entirely to channel sales because we just, everybody needs a certain amount of storage. We could never hire enough salespeople to cover all the possible prospects.
So you mentioned, so it is multi-tenant, so you can partition data but still manage it from a single
pane of glass. Totally.
Shiva, did you get a chance to look at the MSP interface?
No, not yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, let's get time for one last question, Chelsea.
One last question. Let's make it a good one. You can tell me. You can be the judge. This one is from Margaret 1078. What is the process for data recovery?
What does she mean by data recovery?
I guess,
Probably trying to access data from Wasabi.
Yeah.
Once you put it on, that's what I think she's...
Let's go for it. Let's go there.
So go ahead. You can tell.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was trying to do in my trial, basically trying to sort of put data onto Wasabi and trying to be able to see, what kind of, how quickly am I able to reach out that data and access the data. The results are very comparable, actually, sometimes even faster than, even for some of the cold data that I was talking about from my own inventory database standpoint, even some of the items that are not what we call in storage parlance as cold storage tier. Wasabi was able to sort of retrieve it much faster than you would probably get it from an Amazon Glacier. Because in Glacier, basically depending on the SLA that you signed up with them, you got to put in a request and then you got to wait for that amount of time. And if you want it faster than what your SLA dictates, then what is going to happen is you're going to pay additional premium, etc., to get that data, whereas that's not the case in Wasabi.
Yeah, usually you're talking milliseconds, but how you retrieve your software, how you retrieve your data is really a function of the application that you're using. So if you're using Veeam and you want to get your backups back, it's Veeam talking to Wasabi. You don't really have to deal with Wasabi yourself.
And that up for a backup administrator, for example, it doesn't really matter.
No.
It's the exact same interface.
Exactly. So it doesn't matter to him whether it's there's an on-prem storage, Amazon, or Wasabi.
All right.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, guys.
What is this?
All right, let's go ahead and bring it in. We've got the wide shot. All right, guys, we're going to be switching gears to our final segment of the show in honor of Wasabi coming on. We're going to be playing, like we said, Lee Young's favorite segment called Good Move, Bad Move, but we got a special Wasabi version of it, so we'll go ahead and hand out our paddles. We'll also be holding out our wasabi servings. So we've got some fresh wasabi. I'm not sure how fresh this is, but I think it's supposed to be pretty good. We'll go ahead and hand out our initial thing. Basically, it's pretty simple. You guys know how to play this game. We'll be talking about best move, good moves and bad moves for selecting and choosing a cloud provider. I'm going to be playing along.
Why are you giving the bigger one to me?
And we've got these blobs of wasabi on. If you guys have seen the YouTube series Hot One, we're kind of taking our own Hot One. So we're going to be talking about some best practices for choosing a cloud vendor. And we'll be talking about whether it's a good move or bad move and talk about why. After each question, we will be taking a larger and larger dosage of wasabi and kind of see how the conversation goes. We'll start out with no wasabi just so we can get some conversation out of the way. So we'll start out with the first one. The first one is treating cloud storage as a commodity. Do you guys think that's a good move or a bad move? Good move and good move. Shiva, why do you say that?
Because as in the last decade that I have been sort of very closely associated with, the storage industry, storage has evolved to become a commodity more than anything else. So whether you keep the data on-prem or whether you put it on the cloud, so long as you're able to sort of access the data in a meaningful manner with without compromising on user experience and security, I think to me it is a commodity.
So some of these different product differentiations, like we've been talking about, Glacier, Elastic, I don't even know what else. Do you feel that that's actually, making things easier for organizations, or do you think it's going to go in like the electricity model is the best way for everybody?
Actually, I think you may want to understand what each of those terms technically mean.
Yeah.
And then you have to sort of accordingly play alongside.
Okay. All right, Dave, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's going to move to more of a one-size-fits-all. I think all these goofy tiers with, Amazon has 6 different tiers, and I went to a Gartner conference where the analyst got up and said, if you're going to use this cloud storage, you need to have a full-time consultant to determine how to optimize what data to put in which tier in order to optimize your storage. I'm saying, I don't think so. In the wall, you've got one plug, and it doesn't matter whether you're plugging in a toaster or a computer. And I think that's the way storage is going to go for the most part. There will always be edge cases, but for the most part, I think it's just going to be more efficient to have one size fits all.
Okay. All right, guys. It's now down the hatch. Before we get into this, David, we'll talk about this first. Did you guys name the company Wasabi because you guys are fans of wasabi as a food?
No, it's hot.
And also, second question, do you guys have a lot of wasabi at the office?
We get wasabi sent to us. You wouldn't believe how much wasabi we have. Everybody thinks they're being very clever.
Do you guys feel like, are you guys pretty tolerant of wasabi? Shiva, are you big wasabi?
Yeah, I can put up with.
You can? Okay, David, how's your wasabi tolerance?
We have wasabi on everything.
Okay, all right, here we go. First one. All right.
That's spicy stuff.
It's got a kick. Woo. All right, not too bad. Not too bad. Let's go to the next one.
Those tiers are just for show, right?
Let's go to the next one. Trading off data speed for price.
Where's the guy with the water?
Trading off data speed for price. Do you guys think that's a good move or a bad move? Bad move. David?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, is it worth it even if you got dirt cheap,
No, I wouldn't ever do it.
Yeah.
Because user experience trumps to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that'd be like buying electricity and having it turn out to be 90 volts instead of 120 volts. It's at some point, it's just outside the bounds of being useful.
Okay. Let's go to our next one. If you want to pass this down to David.
Is this one bigger?
This one is slightly bigger.
For a bit of a reprieve.
This is really taking.
Thank you, Chelsea.
Chelsea's the savior, as always. I mean, let's just be honest.
Sizable.
Hooking everyone up. There we go.
This is brilliant.
Thank you.
Plenty.
Thank you. We're good. All right.
Definitely
Next
bringing
one.
coals to Newcastle.
That's true.
Woo! Okay.
Man, what I won't do for spice heads.
Oh my god.
Taking nines, literally, like the nines. You mentioned it's 11 nines, and that you lose one file every 600 or so years.
Keep it together, Justin. Keep it together.
Should people be taking that literally? Like, basically, I'm going to be dead before I lose a file.
No, because
we got to vote. We got to vote.
Because one of the things I learned at Carbonite was most data loss is due to people making stupid mistakes.
Okay.
And somebody pushes the wrong button and accidentally deletes everything, or you've got a bug in application software. The bug causes some application to overwrite your data, or you get some employee that you fired who wants to blow up the data before he goes out the door. So it's those kind of things. Data loss from systems failing is pretty minimal, actually, which is why we have immutability in Wasabi buckets, which is a feature that we really are pioneering and pushing. So if I know I'm going to have to keep that MRI for 5 years, when I create a bucket in Wasabi, I can say, I want that bucket to be immutable for 5 years. Once you write that data, it's not going anywhere. You can't delete it, we can't delete it, nobody can modify it. You've got chain of custody and so forth. People are just starting to figure out how important that is for data security. Most people think equipment crashes and we lose data. That's not the main reason people lose data.
All right, Shiva, do you agree?
I completely agree with that. Yeah, it's more human error than anything else.
Yeah, how many people have overwritten a Word file?
Yeah.
You know.
All right, guys, the final one. David, I'll be nice and give you the smaller one out of the 3.
Justin, everyone in the audience wants to know, how are you doing? Who's sweating?
So here's the thing, the biggest difference that I've noticed, wasabi actually it gets not spicy really quickly as opposed to if we were eating like habanero peppers or anything like that, where it just goes like that. So it gets really spicy at the beginning and it's not too bad. I say that now, if I'm like keeled over in the conference room later today, that is it. All right, guys, final one, it's down the hatch.
Holy mackerel, look at the size of this.
Did you know this is what you're going to be signing up for when you agreed to do this?
No,
okay. Well, you were a good sport, as are you, because we just broached this on you guys today, but final one. This is my idea, so I get here good. Oh my God, that was big. Oh, okay. Embracing open standards to avoid vendor lock-in.
Oh God.
Good idea. I think it's a good idea.
What?
Embracing open standards to avoid vendor lock-in.
Yeah, I mean, you have to move to open standards because people will all want to. In the multi-cloud future, people will want to pick compute from one vendor. Compute from one vendor, content delivery from another vendor, storage from another vendor, and they all need to work together.
All right.
Yeah, it helps the best of breed.
Yeah.
Do you guys want any of the sushi to like drive?
Finally, a decent offer from you guys.
All right, guys. Well, we are starting to run out of time, but I did want to give you guys one last opportunity to share any final thoughts or advice. So Shiva, for those folks that are out there that are considering, how to kind of interpret all this information about cloud vendors, performance, pricing, do you have any advice for them?
Yeah, basically, I think you need to sort of understand your data first. Start from the data size and then try to see how you're going to connect to the cloud, and then once you establish that infrastructure, how in terms understand the egress charges, and more importantly all the hidden costs in terms of what it will actually cost for you to retrieve the data when you want to retrieve the data, and how quickly will you be able to retrieve the data, and sort of you have to customize your SLAs, and you do not always have to go by what the vendor gives you as standard SLAs. You can always negotiate on that, and also ensure security and user performance.
Yeah. All right. Now, David, this isn't the first time you've had to eat wasabi as part of your roles as CEO.
No.
You want to tell us that story about what?
So my marketing VP, Mike Welts, who's probably watching and gloating, came up with this thing called Wasabi Roulette.
Oh, God. Oh.
And you take this kind of sushi, only longer pieces, and make a big tray of it, and inside one of them is entirely packed with wasabi, with a little fish put at the end so that you can't tell it's there. And everybody has to take one and eat it. And there were at least 100 pieces of sushi on this platter, and every wasabi employee was there and a bunch of customers. And I got the one with the sushi, with the wasabi in it.
Was that planned?
I am, to this day, I don't know how they did it, but it absolutely must have been a setup. It just
David,
about blew my head off.
Do you have any final takeaways for the audience today?
No, I just think, storage, I think the message I would just say is, I can't believe how, when I walk through a modern data center today and I see every single cage, somebody has had to sweat over their own on-prem storage. And I just think someday it's going to be like electricity or bandwidth. You're going to go into a data center and you're going to say, I need 500 terabytes of storage for all the stuff I'm doing. I should just be able to buy that from the data center. It should just be available. I shouldn't have to go out and have to decide, gee, do I want to buy NetApp or EMC or HP or, it's waste a lot of time on that.
If you're out sweating, it should be because you just ate a ton of wasabi and not because you're stressed out over
Absolutely.
All right. Well, it is now time to announce the winner of our prizes. So kicking it over to Chelsea one last time and find out who's walking away with cool stuff. Chelsea.
Sure thing. I would say the moment you've all been waiting for, but I think we just saw it.
Chelsea, we got some extra wasabi if you would like to participate.
I do love me some wasabi, but not today. I'm going to pass. Yeah. Thank you, Justin. Everyone wants to see this segment on a more regular basis.
Oh, good.
So, Wasabi, you better be back. All right, David? Alrighty, let's talk prizes. We've got some really great ones today. Let's kick it off with swag. So the Wasabi swag pack, it's coming with all of it. All of the goodies, everything you really want, including a drawstring backpack, a couple of stickers for your Tumblr, laptop, whatever you want, We've got, of course, the notebook that has a little transparent pocket and pen. Never lose your chapstick again. We've got some socks, little wasabi pair of socks here. And then, of course, everyone's favorite, a wasabi t-shirt, the Rumble in the Jungle version. So this is going out to a few lucky Spice Heads whose questions I asked live on the air. Those winners are, drum roll please, Michael SC, Julian2160, W and WW Wes.
All right.
Wes. Congratulations if I announced you as one of our swag winners. And then our grand prize, which is going out to 2 very lucky attendees of today's show, is of course the 25-inch Alienware gaming monitor. This is going out to Cameron8126 and Robin E. Congratulations. Big round of applause to all of our winners. If I announced you as one of our winners today, please be sure to email us your contact info and community username to ontheair@spiceworks.com. Before I throw it back over to Justin to send out some closing words, I did want to say a big thank you to everyone in chat for hanging out with us, for also submitting so many great questions. Lee, I miss you, I miss you, I miss you. It's been really good to see some faces again. I know that we haven't had the show in a while, so it was just good to get back into the swing of things, even if it is for a 3 o'clock show. So thanks everyone. That's all that I got. I'll see you guys next week. I'm going to send it back over to Justin.
All right, thank you guys. Big thank you again to Shiva and David. You guys are amazing. Hope you guys had a good time. Thank you guys so much for playing along with all of our shenanigans here.
It's been an experience.
Yes. Thank you to Wasabi for sponsoring today's event as well. We will be back here next week, as Chelsea said. We're going to be talking about Windows Server 2008 end of service. We're going to be throwing a retirement party for Windows Server 2008, so you're not going to want to miss that. For more information about that episode and all things on the air, make sure to follow us in the community at community.spiceworks.com/ontheair. And until next time, stay safe, keep it spicy, and we'll see you guys back here next time.